Hello, welcome back to CinemaBurger. I'm Scott Berger, and I bring you movie reviews from a different perspective. Today we continue with our viewer choice movies with the number one choice for comedy with the movie Booksmart. Released in 2019 and starring Beanie Feldstein and Caitlin Dever, it is also from first-time director and actress Olivia Wilde. And it also has four female writers. Now, first off, this is a movie made for women about women, young women in particular, just going through life. And who else to tell a story about women than women, because they'll get it the most accurate and all the subtleties that go into a story about this. Now, Beanie Feldstein stars as Molly and Caitlin Dever stars as Amy. They're two friends in high school. Throughout high school, they've been very academic and have studied and haven't gone out partying. Now, they're both going to go to good schools and they've earned their work. Now, of course, there's the party crowd in the school, and they all seem like they don't care about anything, but it turns out that they all got good grades and they are going to good colleges as well. Now, Molly finds this out in the bathroom, overhearing some of the other students talk about her, and she thinks that she's going to get the one up on them by saying, while you're all partying, I'm going to go to a good school and become something great. But they all reveal that they're all going to good schools and that they're also going to be something great as well. Now, this really flips this notion on its head about that the nerdy student is going to be better than the popular students, but in this case, the popular students studied just as hard as the nerdy kids, and they also had a fun time in high school, but productive as well. Now, when Molly is in the bathroom, she's looking at the wall while she's sitting in the stall, and there's, of course, bathroom graffiti, as most bathrooms have. But what's funny here is that she corrects the grammar on one of the sentences on the wall, which is interesting, because you never see that. You always just react to what it says, but fixing the grammar is pretty funny, especially because she's very academic. Now, the character of Amy, played by Caitlin Dever, is openly gay, and she has a crush on a girl in school, and it's very, innocent and, I feel realistic because she's afraid to talk to this other girl, which everyone has had that issue. And she's also very politically inclusive and correct, which is nice to see in a comedy, since comedy can also be very offensive. Now, Amy's parents are played by Lisa Kudrow and Will Forte. Now they're accepting of her homosexuality, but they don't like to talk about it. And they think that her and her friend Molly are together. So they always make jokes about that in front of them, and it makes them cringe. Now, the parents have made Amy a graduation cake, or food spread, and it's all really bad puns, which I can appreciate, made by Will Forte, and he says them as they're about to leave the house to try to find a party. Now, a lot of this movie is about that people aren't what they seem on the outside, which is a good moral to have. We have the rich kid, kinda, played by Skylar Gisondo. He plays the character Jared. And we have the weird party girl, Gigi, played by Billy Lord. Now, Skylar Gisondo has also been in a Clarita Diet and a lot of other things, and he's pretty funny. Now, as Molly and Amy are leaving to find this party, they talk about them sleeping over one of their houses so the parents don't suspect they're going to a party. And they talk about spending time together before Amy leaves, because she's going to Africa for a month or so to make tampons for the poor people. So as they're about to leave, they talk about what they're going to do at night, and Amy says, "Oh, we'll probably just do a Korean face mask." and the parents think that's some weird sexual act, which in reality it's probably just a face mask you put on your face to exfoliate your skin. It probably can't have any other meaning, can it? So apparently, if you look up Korean face mask on Urban Dictionary, it has many sexual meanings, none of which I'm going to say on this review. If you feel the need to look them up, do so at your own risk. But a Korean face mask is a sexual innuendo. And I don't know if the writers knew that beforehand or just made the joke about an actual face mask sounding sexual to parents who are not aware of these type of things. But if they are aware of the sexual innuendo, then I give great credit to the writers, because that is such a subtle joke that I feel like most people might miss that. So kudos to you. Now, Molly and Amy talk about Amy eventually being with a woman and about eating out a girl and things like that. And the way they talk about it, I feel like it's very accurate from a female's perspective. Now, they use an Uber to try to get to this party, and they get in the car, and it's actually their principal, played by Jason Sudeikis, who's their driver, and it's one of the most awkward scenes, but hilarious, in the movie. Well, at one point, they're in the car, and they look up on their phone a video of a girl eating out another girl, and they put in headphones because they don't want the principal to hear it, obviously, so their phone is about to die also, so the principal offers to plug it in, and he's like, oh yeah, if you want to listen to your music, that's fine. And then they hear the audio of the scene throughout the whole car, and it's the sound of like the licking sound is hilarious because there's just dead silence other than that. Now when they get to where they think it's the party, it's actually the rich kid Jared's party, and he has his own boat, and Gigi is there, and there's no one there, and it's kind of sad, and they're trying to make Jared realize he can't buy friendship and people's affections and stuff like that. But Jared admits that he admires Molly because she's so smart and like strong and independent, and there's some good connection here. Now Gigi is the weird like druggy character who's actually like really smart and intuitive, and she gives both Molly and Amy strawberries, unaware of what's actually in them. And the song Batshit Crazy is playing in the background, which is perfect music choice. And when they leave and stuff, later on, the drugs hit. Now when the drugs hit, they're at someone else's house who they think is that party that they're trying to go to. And all of a sudden, both of Molly and Amy become dolls, and it's claymation, and they're just critiquing how dolls are made and how they are not anatomically correct and things like that. And Amy starts to like how she looks as the doll, and it's really funny, it's very clever, and it's a great side moment in the movie. And when it cuts to what's really happening, they're just kind of crawling on the ground in real life, and everyone's just staring at them like they're crazy. Now they leave the second wrong party, and their phones are dead, and they don't have a ride, so they see a pizza delivery guy because they see videos online from earlier that the guy Nick, who's the vice president of the school, because Molly's the class president, and he was the one having the party in the first place that they've been trying to go to, sees that they ordered a lot of pizzas, so they figured there's only one area in the town that delivers that much pizza. So they make their hair into like hockey masks, like they're gonna rob somebody, and it's pretty smart because, well, they don't have masks, but they have long hair, so why not use that to their advantage? And they hold up a pizza delivery guy, and this is probably the best like critiquing of movies by movie characters scene I've ever seen, because if you think about it, the things that movie characters do in movies are sometimes like silly or dumb, because it's like people in movies don't watch movies because you notice a lot more trends and things like that. That's kind of what was so special about the movie Scream, because it points out horror movie tropes. So when Molly and Amy get in the car to try to hijack this pizza delivery guy, he's like, "Why'd you get in my car? Like, you don't know if I'm a serial killer or a murderer. It's like, think about what you're doing, and you're using your hair as a mask. Like, you're way too young to do this. Like, we're in the middle of nowhere almost. Like, be smart." Which is a true fact. And he reveals that he carries a gun on him to protect himself, which he doesn't use on them, of course. But that scene is very clever because it's something you don't really think about consciously in movies, where like this would happen, where like in real life, like why would you do that kind of thing? It's silly, or you're putting yourself in danger. But because it's a movie, those kind of tropes or stereotypes are allowed to be getting away with. Now they finally get to Nick's party, and they go to try to make their moves on the people they like. Now Molly kind of talks to Nick and finds out he's into Harry Potter and stuff like that, so maybe she was wrong about him. She assumed that he was like a sports guy, or didn't care about anything that she might be interested in, and she was pleasantly surprised. And she has a daydream of them just like dancing to like classical music, which is nice. Now Jared ends up at the party too, and he's also still being nice to Molly and stuff like that. Now Amy finds out that the girl she's into really isn't into girls, but ends up making out in the pool with Nick. So both Amy and Molly's crushes, per se, end up with each other, so they get disappointed. So Amy wants to leave, and Molly's like, no, we should have fun. And this is when those two argue, and they yell at each other, and Amy says Molly's controlling, and they kind of like break up the friendship for a bit, as these type of things happen in all these kinds of movies. Now Molly eventually sees also that Nick and the other girl were together. Now Amy eventually gets with another girl. She's kind of like the I don't care about anything type girl. Now there's only one other scene with this girl, is in the beginning when they're in class, and she kind of says something like hi to Amy, but it's played off as weird. But then all of a sudden there's like sexual tension between them. But it kind of feels out of nowhere, just because there's only one other scene with this person, at least with Molly and Jared's characters. They are set up previously in a few other scenes, so it feels more organic. But Amy has her first gay experience. Now what I really like about this movie is that even though it has multiple writers, you don't get the sense of overlapping tones in the movie or conflicting ideas, because a lot of times when a movie has a lot of writers, there's like the too many cooks in the kitchen scenario where things are inconsistent. But this movie has a great flow to it, and everything feels mostly organic, except for the thing I mentioned before. Another great thing about this movie is the movie is about two young women. They're kind of both exploring their sexuality, but they're not being persecuted by it because they're women, because that happens a lot in society. If a movie starring two teenage boys and them trying to get with girls, nothing wrong is seen with that because of how society views people. But this movie lets it happen with females, but it doesn't come under scrutiny for that, and that's why this movie is great. Now at the end, because they're at the party that gets busted by cops, Amy creates a diversion and gets herself arrested, so they get out of jail because they were only there overnight. Now Molly, the night before, she gets home by the girl who was seen as slutty but is also smart. She gives her a ride home, and they have like a real connecting moment, both seeing each other for not what they are on the outside. And the girl gives Molly a ride home, but what's funny is she's like, oh, so where do you live? Because they just started driving, and that's another thing that happens in movies a lot, where someone gets picked up off the street, like to be given a ride home, and they never say where they live. So that's another like thing to point out that happens a lot. So Molly gets Amy out of jail the next morning. They have to get to graduation in like 10 minutes because they always cut it close in these types of situations. So when they get in the car, they say Waze will get you there in 17 minutes, but we'll make it in 7. Now, anytime I've been in the car with someone using Waze, it always takes longer to get somewhere because it takes them in wrong direction. So thank you for pointing out how bad Waze actually is. Now, Jared is asked to fill in for Molly to give the valedictorian speech until Molly gets there, so she starts reading Molly's speech, which is about powerful women, and it's funny because he's a guy. So when Molly gets there, she kisses Jared, and they end up together because they're both decent people. And they graduate, and Molly takes Amy to the airport, and they leave, and it's sad, but then she's like, oh, I don't have to be the last one on the plane. We got time to like get pancakes and stuff, and then the movie ends. Which is always funny because you need to get there like 3 hours early to go through customs and stuff, but you can be there earlier, so that end puts a spin on the tragic like leaving scene in the end of a movie. And then also they see a warrant out for the pizza strangler, and it's that pizza delivery guy they talked to earlier who was giving them lessons about the dangers of strangers, and he was actually a strangler and a killer. So now when Booksmart came out in theaters, it did very well critically, but financially it didn't for some reason. Could it be because it starred 2 women? Could it be because a type of movie like this would have been better on a streaming service? I don't know, but this movie deserves to be seen. It's one of the best comedies out there today right now, and it really represents women in a good way because it's written and directed by women, and who else are going to understand them any better? I highly recommend this movie. It's very inclusive and politically correct, but still manages to have clever jokes and comedy in it. Now, I'll give this a 4.5 out of 5 burgers only because of the girl that Amy ended up with at the end. They didn't really set that up so well. But other than that, the movie is amazing. So I'm Scott Berger, and I'll see you next time.